Dear
Kids.
So we wanted to switch up the vlog a little bit and bring you guys something different on the weekends. And so we decided to do a series called Dear Kids. We have 5 children and we wanted to be able to leave something here for them just to kind of walk them through our story and how they came to be here and all of the hilarious things that we learned along the way.
How we met.
Once upon a time when I was 20, I was so sick and tired of the dating scene and all of the just junk that it brought with it. And I was having a casual phone conversation with my mom, who decided to jokingly say, "You should get on one of those dating websites." And I know that she never thought that I was going to, but I actually had just happened to get an email that was offering me to be on one, and the picture that they used was somebody that I knew from high school. So naturally, I signed up for the free option that they had. I didn't put a picture. I filled out the profile. Typical girl. I wrote like all about myself and my values and all of those things, and left it. And so I waited, and I didn't get any matches at all, probably because I didn't have a picture, which is probably my saving grace. Until the very end of the free trial, and it sent me Brad. And so I happened to notice that he was a pilot in my hometown, and I was a flight attendant at the time in another city, and I wanted to introduce myself to him to see if he worked for my company and if he would ask for me to be their flight attendant so that I wouldn't have to sit on reserve. So I sent him an email that was just like, "Hey, would you do this basically? Do you already have a flight attendant you like to work with? If not, would you allow me to do that?" But he didn't work for my company, and he got my email. I guess you looked at my profile.
I did, yes, and sent you a message back and told her who I was and that I did not fly for the airlines, that I was a flight instructor and I was flying skydivers at the time, which she makes fun of me all the time for saying that, and not because I flew skydivers, just I guess the way that I said it. But, and then a couple emails later, we phoned each other.
Well, so he wrote me that email that was like, "Oh, I don't work for the airlines. I fly skydivers." And all I could see was like the typical pilot, big watch, aviators. Excuse me, I don't do airline flying. And so, of course, I was bummed because I'm like, "Oh, great, I'm going to sit on reserve." But he actually said that he read my profile and that he thought we had some stuff in common. And I was like, "Sure, we do." But it was interesting to me because he hadn't seen me. And so he left his phone number. And I, being the good little Southern girl that I am, wrote him back promptly and said, "I do not call boys, but here's my phone number." So a couple of weeks, I guess, really went by. I had told him that I was moving back to Knoxville, and he didn't call me until I was actually in the week that I was supposed to be, going through that transition. And so when he called, I didn't even know who you were for like
First couple minutes
of the conversation.
Yeah.
And we just talked like we were old friends. Like we kind of always known each other, and we just kept joking. And I asked him, why he would call someone that he doesn't even know. And we were just really like, I don't think either one of us were really trying to impress each other. We were just being ourselves.
Yeah.
There was no awkwardness of like the first date. And so we actually ended up talking for like an hour, and we laughed a whole bunch. And so when the conversation was over, you asked me out.
Yes.
And my mom was totally nervous. She thought I was going to go on a date with a serial killer, and told me that when we met up, he would have to produce his driver's license. So like if I went missing, she'd be able to find me. And so he asked me to meet him in the downtown area where we live, which I had never even driven to. I was really, even though I was a flight attendant and had lived away from home, I was actually really sheltered, and just had not really gone a lot of places by myself. And so he told me that he drove a big Dodge truck. And so I was trying to park, and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know where to park, and I don't see a Dodge truck. Only at this point, he could see me. And he was like, "Oh, I lied, just in case you were like really scary."
You have to have an out. in case I hadn't seen your picture. I had to have an out in case that you were not who you said you were, and yeah. So I told her that I drove a Dodge truck, and I actually drove a Nissan Altima.
So he helped me park my car, and we went to dinner, and I was just 20. And so we went to a pizza and burger kind of bar place, and we had burgers. And
cheese, please.
Yeah, like everything I said, he seemed to think was super adorable. And I actually started acting like a 4th grade girl. Like everything he said, like just made me so nervous. Like I was just really nervous. And so we ate and played pool and went for a walk. And then I was like, well, I'm going to go home because I was just so nervous. Like really afraid that he was like going to ask me out again or like try to hold my hand. Like I was very nervous. And so we walked to my car, and I guess he wanted to give me a hug.
Yeah. And so then you didn't want to give me a hug, and you just kind of slid down in your car, and I put you in your car, and then I saluted you because I didn't know what else to do at that point.
And I was so awkward that I called him out. I was like, did you just salute me? And he was like, yes, I did. And so I think we kind of both walked away thinking that couldn't have ended any worse.
Right.
And we weren't going to see each other again. But because I had never driven there before, I got lost. And so I had to call him because I figured, well, he knew where I was. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to tell like my parents where I was. So he talked me out of there, and before we got off the phone,
Asked you on another date.
he did. He asked me on another date, and we went out about 3 times in a row. But the next date, we went flying, I think. So we went flying, and I was like calling all my friends and telling them it was like Pretty Woman. But our 3rd date, we were gonna go up to a fire tower in the mountains where we live. And he was like, yeah, I know where it is, no big deal. But he didn't.
Got lost.
He got us lost. Yeah. And what he didn't realize was that recently, unfortunately, in the news, a guy in our area had actually like thrown a girl off of the fire tower. And I like cannot forget like the horrible things that I hear about. And so as I like we're driving up there, I'm like sinking down further and further in my seat, and it is just I'm realizing I'm only on my 3rd date with this guy. It is getting dark. I do not know him. What did I get myself into? And we're talking, and I don't really know what I was doing.
At this point, yeah, you were sinking down in your seat, and you could tell that you were very uncomfortable. And I think I said something.
You were like, "Are you afraid?"
Are you afraid of me?
And I didn't even hesitate. I was like, "Yes, I want to go home." And so he was like, "Oh man, don't be scared. I'm not going to hurt you." And I was like, "Well, how do I know that? You could be like this guy." And then of course you were like, "Oh, I forgot about that. I'm so sorry to scare you." So we made it home. Obviously, yes. We made it home. So, and then kind of after that, we just always were.
Yep.
Like nonstop. I went to work, and we talked on the phone, and this was right when text messaging was becoming a thing, and he did not want to text at all, but I wanted to text, and so he picked up text messaging for me, but we just kind of always were. And so when I would come in, he would pick me up from the airport, and we would be together until it was time for one of us to go back to work. And about 2 weeks into me being home, we kind of had the conversation. We're like, I think we're going to do this. We're going to be a family. And so that's when, things got really hilarious because it was time for us to get engaged, only Brad didn't want anyone to know that we were getting engaged. So,
because it was too soon in my mind, but I wanted to do it, but I didn't want other people to think that we were crazy because we met on the internet, and then it was going too fast, and
yeah. So, but and I think it scared both of us too, because it really was like you hear people say, like, you just know that you know. And I always thought I was going to make like a really wise decision. It was going to be well thought out. Everything was going to make sense on paper. It was all going to be like working in that way. And then when we met each other, it wasn't exactly like that. And we had 2 different jobs that kind of were pulling us away from each other at the time. And we had, 2 different lives. I mean, he lived in a part of our community that's 45 minutes from where I lived. And so it was actually like just that thing where you're compelled and you're like, okay, this is what it's supposed to be. So we're just going to figure out a way to make it work. So, dear kids, this is how we met.